Hi, everybody. Thanks for checking in with us. Chris McKinnon here with John Keller for What a Week, and what a week it has been.
Happy Labor Day.
Yeah.
To everyone.
Labor
and to
Day
you.
weekend.
What are your plans for the weekend, Chris?
Going to be a low-key kind of, working on Monday, so.
Yeah. No, I'm doing absolutely nothing. The dog, the garden, that's about it.
Kind of closing down for the season, too. It's
Maybe a cold beverage or two.
There you go. All right. Hard to just pick 3 topics this week to talk about.
Yeah, it always is, yeah.
But let's start here. Let's talk about this kind of Joe Kennedy and potentially running for Senate here and challenging long-term Ed Markey. I mean, let's talk about this, because last week when we discussed it, it was kind of like, well, he's probably feeling it out if it's going to be a successful bid. But now it looks more and more like he could challenge Markey.
Well, he met with the press the other day out in Newton, and I was there for that, and he certainly was sounding as if it's a go. He says he's still consulting with his family. There you see him out in front of the fire headquarters in Newton the other day. And his argument appears to be that, look, nothing really against Ed Markey, but it's time for some fresh energy, some fresh ideas. And the interesting thing is, and this will certainly emerge if the two men run against each other, Joe Kennedy is not to the left of Ed Markey by any means. If anything, he's kind of a centrist in the context of House Democrats. He gave a speech some months ago that clearly a lot of work went into, arguing for a sort of moral capitalism where business takes on more of the burden of community building and helping erase wage inequality and that kind of thing. A far cry from, say, a Bernie Sanders or somebody out on the party's left. So it's going to be an interesting clash of generations and, to some extent, of ideology as well.
Absolutely. And, of course, the Kennedy name. I mean, last week we also touched a little bit on that. Doesn't maybe have as much clout. But, I mean, obviously he's looking at this as, can I win, before he jumps into the race.
question.
So.
I think I mentioned last week, the Kennedys don't like to take wild risks.
Right.
And this would, not necessarily be a slam dunk, but the thing about Joe Kennedy is he brings the Kennedy name, but he gives it his own spin, both in terms of his presentation and his politics. That's going to make it an interesting test of how much appeal the Kennedy name still has, even in Massachusetts.
That'll be fun to watch. It'll be
yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to moderate the debate.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good one, John, for you. Let's talk about transportation. Obviously, we talk about transportation here in Boston, in the Boston area, quite a bit, and how public transportation has been very difficult. The traffic's horrible. Everything's pretty much bad when you talk transit. But on a broader scale here in New England, I mean, you've got now governors talking about, I know Governor of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, talking about trying to work on some transportation projects together. This is a regional issue.
I think it has to be. And don't forget the role the feds are going to have to play. And the reason is, fixing our transit problems is going to be wicked expensive. The thing about rail service, which, former Governor Dukakis, a big advocate of rail, and you see now the high price of housing is pushing commuters further and further away from urban centers. There are a lot of people who commute into Boston from Providence and the Providence area because they can afford to live down there, and it's a nice place to live. The problem is it's extremely expensive to build new rail lines, improve existing ones, and it's not clear that the customers can really subsidize the service. In fact, they definitely can't. You need public sector help and private sector help. And in the meantime, as we're seeing, fixing up the MBTA is also extremely expensive. So they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here. I think the meeting between the governors was an interesting and constructive step. But these officials are going to have to work together, federal, state, and local level, if we're going to get out of this mess. It's not something that, well, maybe you could bump up taxes a little bit, snap your fingers, and it's fixed.
Not going to happen that way.
I don't think so.
Going to need some investment for sure.
Absolutely, in collaboration.
All right, and let's also talk about the latest polling out there, showing, obviously, we're still far out from the 2020 election, but showing President Trump getting trounced in a lot of cases here against the Democratic opponent. First of all, first takes on this polling.
Well, look. Polling got a bad rap back in 2016 when several key state polls, most notably Ohio, were way off. and dramatically underestimated the Trump support. So that led to the big surprise. However, the national polls were right on the money. They correctly forecast that Hillary Clinton had a 2 to 3 percentage point margin in the national popular vote. Remarkably accurate. So, look, the polls are a snapshot of a particular moment. They're to be taken with a grain of salt. But this president's polling has been remarkably consistent. His approval rating has never really varied from a range of the mid-30s to the mid-40s.
Yeah.
Few outliers have them a little higher, but for the most part, that's where it has stayed. But now that there are real contrasts, people are being offered choices in these polls, Biden or Trump, Warren or Trump. I think it speaks to the mess that the president has gotten himself into with trade policies that appear to have stifled economic growth, not enhanced it, with just this constant flow of divisiveness and controversy. These polls, I think, reflect voter fatigue big time. And the question for the Trump campaign is, how do we fix it? How do we change the narrative and start projecting a more positive message? They've got plenty of time. We're months away from any actual voting, but they got to get going.
They got to figure it out pretty quickly, because every day that goes by, tick-tock, tick-tock, you're getting closer and closer to this election.
And, you know, I have a theory, and we'll find out if there's any validity to it, that when it comes to an incumbent president, voter opinions are set about a year out from the election. That would mean this November. If I'm right, time is really getting short.
All right, John.
And, of course, I'm never wrong, as you know, Chris.
You're never, ever wrong.
Right.
Appreciate
that vote of confidence.
Of course, absolutely. I'd pull the lever for you, John, for sure.
Good deal.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks for checking in with us. We'll see you next week for What a Week.
Have a great weekend.